What's going on, everyone? The Los Angeles Lakers took another embarrassing loss. This was a very winnable game, one that they should have won. And lately, every game has been crucial. Every game has been a must win. And bearing some ridiculous result and collapse by the San Antonio Spurs and some crazy run by the Lakers these last 4 games, they're not going to make the playoffs, which is amazing given that this roster was put together for the playoffs, but also they were one of the favorites to win the championship this year. Now, whether they would have or not is neither here nor there, but to think that they wouldn't have at least made the play-in is pretty ridiculous, and it just shows how dismantled this team is, how dysfunctional this team is. Obviously, I mean, they don't have the chemistry. They don't have the defensive guys. They don't have a lot of things that you need to be an elite caliber team. But still, they had more than enough to at least make the playoffs. And then the whole idea was once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen, right? You got Anthony Davis and LeBron James. They're good enough to, win you a couple games. You get to a game 7 against, say, the Suns or something like that. Anything could happen at that point. LeBron's good enough to win you a game still, I think. Davis is good enough to maybe win you a game. The two of them can probably win you a game. There's 3 games. All you need is a fourth, and now you're in competition. Now you're in the conversation. But now this is neither here nor there. Now the Lakers are going to go into the offseason with no draft picks, nothing to really build a caliber team for next season. They don't have a ton of cap space, and they're very limited. So what does that mean? Now, obviously, the Laker roster needs a complete rehaul. And there's always going to be a veteran player or guys that'll step in, that'll take a vet minimum or take, a little less to see what develops. We never got to see Kendrick Nunn. We probably won't see Kendrick Nunn this year. Maybe next year he'll give us a little boost. You keep the guys that were efficient and did well for you this year. Maybe you keep like a Stanley Johnson. Try to figure out a way to re-sign Malik Monk because I think that he's still great off the bench. He's a great 6th guy. You likely keep Carmelo Anthony. Outside of that, I mean, you can make an argument for everyone else to go. Austin Reeves is young, Taylor Horton-Tucker, but those are your really only valuable trade assets, right? Other than like second-round picks and like way future first-round draft picks, all you really have is Tucker and, Austin Reeves, 2 guys that maybe a team would like to take on, maybe would see the potential and development in them. I know that there's still some teams in the league that value Taylor Horton-Tucker given his age, and think that maybe in 3 or 4 years he could actually become something. There have been reports coming out about that. So there are teams that are rebuilding, things like that may be willing to take that on. You could always package that with Russell Westbrook to a team like OKC. OKC can absorb all of the cap space, right? And so you have options. It's just very limited. Now, obviously you have Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Those are your focus. If they're healthy, there are 2 guys that are arguably the best duo in the NBA, even still with LeBron's age, things like that. Eventually, LeBron's going to see that decline. But if these 2 guys can stay healthy, and get their mind right, which this might be the best scenario for them, missing the playoffs, getting that extended rest, being able to just work on their bodies, their minds, things like that, and regroup for next year. I mean, we saw it. LeBron missed the playoffs, and the next year, they won the title. And a lot of that had to do with the bubble. A lot of that had to do with them getting proper rest leading into the bubble. So this could be a blessing in disguise for the Lakers for the future. Anthony Davis has been dealing with nagging injuries all year. LeBron's had some this year. That just comes with age, right? So this may be good for the 2 of them. And you have your nucleus. You have your main core that you want to build around. Obviously, the Westbrook experiment didn't work out, but you do have 2 of the best guys in the NBA when healthy working together. So you always have a shot. You always have a puncher's chance with just those 2. It's just building a roster around it. Now, you never know. You could get a younger guy, somebody that's a free agent that is willing to take a cut to come over. I mean, you saw that with Kendrick Nunn. You saw that with Malik Monk even. I mean, nobody thought Malik Monk was going to take a vet minimum to come and play with the Lakers. There were teams that were throwing much more money at him, stuff like that, because he is that guy that could be a spark. He is a consistent scorer for you. He does have his bad nights, but he's been arguably our most consistent scorer all year. And so you never know. You may be able to get a young guy or two, find a little gem here and there. Lakers have been great at like snagging young talent in the draft, things like that. So there is the potential there. Now, obviously, Westbrook, I would be absolutely shocked if he starts for the Lakers next year. I think he's going to be a guy that they trade immediately. There are definitely more options. It makes sense. I know a lot of people wanted him traded at the deadline. It just didn't make sense. People wanted too much. You're not going to get any value, especially then. But at least now he's an expiring contract, right? So you have more teams that would be willing to take that on because they only have to deal with a year of Westbrook and then he's off the books. Again, a team like OKC, they can just absorb his cap fully, throw in a couple draft picks, maybe throw in a Tucker. Here you go. And now you cleared a bunch of cap space to go and do some things. That is always a benefit that could work out. The New York Knicks trade, I wouldn't be shocked if that's still on the table. I know there's been conflicting reports. Many people say that they are willing to do it. Some people are saying they aren't. I think that that is probably the best win-win for both teams that you could get. Because one, the Knicks are underwhelming. They started off great, but clearly they're not good enough to do anything significant. You bring on a Westbrook, he has shown that he still has it in him, just not as the third option. I mean, today he was arguably the second option, and he put up damn near a 30-point triple-double. We've seen games where it was just him, and he was able to, lead the team and almost win the game entirely by himself. So he still has that in him. He still has that guy. Him going to New York and being that one guy, with the Julius Randle or whatever the case may be, I think that there is potential there for him to actually sort of reinvigorate his career, actually become that star caliber guy that they want. And if it doesn't work out, you just let him go. You have all that cap space. You clear a bunch of dead contracts with multi-years on them for New York. So for New York, I see it as a win-win. If Westbrook works, great. Not just that, it's very likely going to sell tickets. Westbrook's sort of drive and just, competitive nature, stuff like that fits the New York mindset. So you have the success either way of Westbrook going to New York. It makes a ton of sense. Again, if it works, great. Now you can kind of figure out what you want to do. If it doesn't work, all right, go sign with another team. Figure it out. Now you just cut $44 million or whatever it was off your cap, and there you go. You're ready to lead the charge. So I really think Westbrook's going to get traded to some capacity. Obviously, there might be another team that just wants to unload some contracts, things like that, maybe get some good role players and willing to take on his salary in order to alleviate that. Teams like Portland, maybe. Maybe you can get like a Nurkic or something like that because he is an expiring contract. Maybe, you sign and trade him, throw in a couple like random filler guys. They're a team that's clearly trying to rebuild. There's no real major stars that are going to come in this time, and they're trying to build around Lillard. So maybe you do that for a year, see how that works. I don't think that'll happen, but it's something that's out there because we don't know if Nurkic is going to leave or stay. They have a couple other expiring contracts, so you can make a deal work. My point is that there are options. Whether that's on the table or not is neither here or there. I think the OKC and New York deal is likely the two best options, and one of those I think is the most likely option. But beyond that, Frank Vogel. I think Frank Vogel is gone. This is it for him. He's not the only problem, but he was a huge problem. We saw in the beginning of the year, there was no reason you should be having LeBron, Rondo, and Westbrook on the court at the same time. Like, that's completely redundant. That's completely neutralizing your potential of value on the court. His rotations were never solid, never consistent. We had the most or second most starting lineups in the NBA this year. I mean, there was just no consistency. And he is known for a defensive-minded coach. But this team had zero defense whatsoever. So when your defensive-minded coach can't convince you to play defense, there's no offense. And we lost Jason Kidd, things like that. So it was just a complete mess. Vogel wasn't doing any favors with the rotations and stuff like that. I mean, everyone was preaching from day one. Okay, Westbrook and LeBron and Davis probably isn't going to work, but if you scatter their minutes, things like that, maybe they can figure it out. It's a good time, when LeBron is sitting on the bench, You let Westbrook run the show. Tell Westbrook, hey, I need you to go get me 20 in the time that, LeBron's sitting on the bench. I need you to just take over this game. I really think Westbrook would have done that. But you never put Westbrook in a position to succeed. You always had him on the court with LeBron or Davis or whatever the case may be. You never really used him in a winning way to really get the most out of Westbrook. And that is coaching. That has a lot to do with coaching. And however they felt about it. Yeah, they benched him, stuff like that. But you never put him, in my opinion, in a position to succeed. The team never really got fully healthy, so they were never able to gel properly. Vogel isn't the sole blame here. Neither is Westbrook. Neither is, anything. It was a component of multiple parts. Unfortunately, it just wasn't this year. I mean, it happens. It's the NBA. That's how it works, right? But I don't expect Vogel to be back next year regardless. Now, what are the options? I don't know. I mean, there's talks about Doc Rivers. I've never been high on Doc Rivers because Doc Rivers, many believe that if he's going to come up short in this playoffs, Philly might get rid of him in order to try to bring in a coach that can make him beat and Harden work. Doc Rivers is beloved in the NBA, but what has he done? The only time he's ever won was with a team that had 3 Hall of Famers in their prime that should have easily won. That arguably didn't even need a coach. And you had Rondo on that team. And they only got 1 championship out of it. He's always been underwhelming. The Clippers, he had arguably the best team on paper for years and just kept underachieving. Philly, it's been the same thing. So I don't know what the options really are as far as who could come and coach the Lakers. Phil Jackson, I don't see just coming out. I know people have thrown that name out. I don't see that happening. But I'm sure somebody is going to replace Vogel, whoever that case may be. And then, again, Westbrook and LeBron and Anthony Davis. At least you have them. I know that there's rumors about them trading both, blowing it up. At this point, LeBron makes no sense. Most teams aren't going to give up enough to get LeBron at this age, at this time, to actually justify you trading him. And LeBron, I don't think wants to leave. I think he's happy. He's settled. His kids are in school. He's in LA. He's making, money doing commercials, movie projects, everything. He's in the perfect spot to be in for retirement. And so I don't see any team willing to trade for him and give up significant pieces to help a rebuild or sort of reboot or whatever the case may be. And that's just never what the Lakers have done, right? Lakers have never tried to grow from the ground up. The one time they tried, it didn't work out and they blew it up. And I know a lot of people are upset. Like, look at the team that we could have had with all these guys, Ingram and Kuzma and, Josh Hart and all these people. But if you took everybody we've had, Lonzo, all of them, and Randall, put them on one team, that team is not winning a championship, even now. Like, as great as they all are in individual parts and in their roles, none of them are leading their teams to a championship. Like, them together aren't going to lead them to a championship. Most of them are on teams that aren't even going to make the playoffs, and they're the stars in. The other ones are in the play-in and likely going to get taken out in the first round. None of those guys would have done anything to bolster our team enough to really do that. And we got a championship out of it. There is no, the big argument with that doesn't really make sense to me personally, because people, I think, don't understand how hard it is to win a championship. Like, there have been, think of sticking with the Lakers, think of like Gary Payton, Karl Malone, Shaquille, Kobe. You had Dwight Howard when he was the Orlando Dwight Howard. Yeah, he was coming off of back surgery, stuff like that. Steve Nash. Yeah, a lot of people were like, oh, Steve Nash was a terrible trade, but he just came off of a damn near MVP season. It doesn't always work out. And then you never see these young teams leading the charge and winning titles. Like, it's always guys led by veterans, led by, those star vet guys that have been in the league for multiple years, things like that. I mean, even the Suns, yes, they're young, but they have Chris Paul, who is arguably one of the greatest leaders ever, one of the greatest basketball minds ever, one of the greatest point guards ever. I mean, they're being led by a veteran. They have guys like Jay Crowder, things like that. All of this plays a role. And so the Lakers did the right thing in going and getting Anthony Davis, especially when you got LeBron James. As soon as you got LeBron James, all those young guys became irrelevant because the goal was to win a championship. And they did that. Bubble, whatever excuse you want to make, whatever the case may be, they still win a championship. It's still a banner up in the sky that is there forever. Like, they did their job. And now it's just trying to win more and, replenish LeBron's time while you have it. And I think you have LeBron, you have Davis. So build around them to the best of your ability. Hopefully they can stay healthy and maybe win another title or get into the playoffs. And again, anything can happen. Anthony Davis, I don't think they trade unless you just get a complete king's ransom. Again, there are many teams that probably would take an Anthony Davis because Anthony Davis, when healthy, we've seen it even these last 2 games. He is still one of the top players in the league. It's just him staying healthy. But big guys are always injured, always missing games, stuff like that. So believe me, there is a demand for Anthony Davis if he became available. I don't think the Lakers would trade him unless you just get some crazy keen ransom. But you never know. I don't know how I would feel about that because, like, what are you going to get? Maybe Chicago. Maybe you could get like a DeRozan and Vucevic for an Anthony Davis. Maybe get another young guy in. I've thrown that out there before. Some people are like, that would never happen, but it very well could. I mean, Anthony Davis is from Chicago. Anthony Davis is still one of the best centers, top 10 players in the league. The Chicago Bulls right now, even with DeRozan playing an MVP caliber role, still is like, 0-12 against the top 3 teams in each conference or something like that now. Like, they're not good enough to win a championship as constructed. You trade for an Anthony Davis, at least you got a guy that could take over games. You still got Lonzo, you still got LaVine. You could probably go and get some other nice little role player. Patterson's going to be back and healthy and stuff. You got enough to be likely better. I mean, worst case scenario, Davis coming back, you're just as good as you were this year, if not slightly better. But that's neither here nor there. Regardless, at the end of the day, I think that we're going to see a different team, period. I know a lot of people are upset with Rob Pelinka. Rob Pelinka did his job. I mean, even last year, everyone was praising Pelinka. Oh my God, this team just won a championship. They just got 2 co-6 man of the year. They just added all these pieces. Lakers are going to win the championship. And then it's a disaster and everyone blames him. Like, he did his job. This year, same thing. Everyone was preaching, get Carmelo Anthony, do this, do that. He goes and does this. He puts together a roster that nobody saw coming, gets all the praise in the world. Everyone's talking about how, again, Rob Pelinka pulled the rabbit out of his hat, all of this stuff. And then it becomes a disaster, and look what happens. People want to blame him from the Westbrook thing. You're not going to hit every time, for one. But 2, that was clearly LeBron and Anthony Davis. They had a meeting prior. Supposedly, Pelinka had it lined up to get DeRozan and Buddy Hield, which would have been much better. I think they would be in a much better spot personally. But LeBron and Davis wanted Westbrook. So what do you do as a GM? You go and get Westbrook. Figure it out. Make it work. Maybe it will work. Maybe it makes sense. That's what you guys want. You guys are the stars. Okay, fine. Let's do it. That's just how the league works. But overall, it's gonna be an interesting offseason. I'm curious to see what develops. I definitely think Westbrook is traded. I think he's gone. I think Vogel's gone. I think that this roster is going to get a facelift, whatever that case may be. And we'll see. We'll see what develops. But as always, this is a discussion, so I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What did you think of the Lakers season? Is it a big disappointment? Do you think it's not? Did you see it coming? Did you not see it coming? All these things I'd love to hear down in the comments below. If you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notifications. Stay up to date with all things sports.